I am going to tell you a story, share my story. In 1990, I went into recovery for alcohol abuse. Since then, I've spent decades working on my issues and helping others to do the same. I discovered I was a woman in a family of origin that read like a Lifetime made-for-television movie. You know the kind, where one thing after another happens, and just when you think it can't get worse, something comes out of the left field and hits them even harder. Well, mostly that was my childhood. However, recovery is an amazing journey, so the blessings are equally rewarding. 4 years ago in 2021, through DNA, my birth father was identified by name. God bless Ancestry.com. His story unfolded before me due to social media and his family. For the next couple of years, I struggled under the weight of who he was, who I was, and how I came to be. It was as if the universe decided to reveal all of the issues I came into the world with again, all at once, and turn them into a slideshow presentation. The therapy of my young adult life did not have a lot of this information to work with, I just didn't have it. The identity of my missing father was the last piece. For these last few years, the flood of knowing who he was, how I came to be, and what happened presented me with a picture I could never share completely in an AA meeting. Also, facing my childhood on a deeper level for yet another time overwhelmed me as I worked to finish my master's degree. Recovery really is like the peeling off the skin of an onion, one layer at a time. I am grateful that I had years of AA to help me process the information. I am again reclaiming my space as a human, maybe for the final time in this life. Though with my life you never know. The reason I am sharing it is that I hid and lied about my childhood until alcohol abuse and the process of recovery made me face it. It was through sharing and revealing myself that I started to heal. I also realize now it is the sharing of our stories that helps others heal and find hope. Family dysfunction and addiction are isolating issues, and so many of us grow up with them. Even though I grew up in one of the most powerful and richest nations on the earth, my family is riddled with addictions and mental health issues. I am genetically related to a large number of people. I don't have a single whole sibling, and I don't even know most of my family or even live in the same part of the country. What I have heard from other siblings is there are at least 25 children on my father's side and 7 on my mother's side. I have met 3 on my mother's side. I have not physically seen them for about 20 to 30 years, and then very rarely. I have not yet met one from my father's side of the family. I left my mother Maggie's home at 17. There are several partners on both Maggie's and Albert, my father's side. I was raised strictly with my mother, who lied about who my father was. She said it was her first husband, Bob. I spoke to Bob in early sobriety, on the phone, and he told me he was not my father. I thought he was lying because of my Maggie or due to his poor treatment of his own children. I always wanted to believe my mother, that she was completely the wrong party. Though in real life it was so much more complicated. I left Maggie at 17 in the 1970s, though I started running away at 15. My younger half-sister Debbie came with me, as I told her I would take her out of that mess, and for some reason she trusted me. I turned Maggie into the welfare, finally asking for help. But I am skipping ahead, so let me go back to the beginning. Maggie was divorcing her first husband, or vice versa, in the Midwest. Albert's first wife had left him, and he was looking for her. He was going to bring her back home, or he was going to kill her according to the story I heard. He was from the South, not that they killed their wives down there, it was just him. He owned a large tobacco farm that was worked on by him and his sons. Another set of half-siblings. Maggie was a stay-at-home wife with no skills and 4 children under 7. I would have been the 5th. She lost custody of all 4 children in court for neglect, as she had no means to care for them. On this point, I feel great empathy for her. Maggie was devastated, and I believe that one act of taking her 4 children after the divorce destroyed her, as she had no support of any kind. So, Albert and my half-married mother in a contentious divorce had a fling. Maggie got pregnant, Albert said nope, and she left the area fearing losing me too, determined to start fresh 1,000 miles away. Abortion was not an option at the time. She became a housekeeper and lived in a basement apartment. Maggie was abused at her own home and left at 14 years old to live with relatives. I believe her upbringing and devastating marriage traumatized Maggie beyond the point of being able to cope. About my birth, Maggie told me she worked and saved $100 to pay for my birth in full. She did that so the hospital officials couldn't keep me. I was born in a capital city still in the Midwest, far away from Maggie's side of the family. My father's name on my birth certificate was fictitious. It was made up of grandfather's last name, Bob's first name. I later took on the name of a stepfather, let's call him David. David was in my life for 3 years. I kept his name until my senior year in high school. He was the father of Debbie. Some of these people or their families are still alive, which is why they are anonymous. David died when I was 8, though I did not see him after I was 5. Maggie met her second husband through a Lonely Hearts ad in a paper, moving to the West Coast to marry him. Debbie was born 9 months later. When we left David, Debbie was 2, I was about 5, and we were living in a logging camp in the West where he worked. Maggie, my sister, and I had to hitch a ride with the milkman's delivery truck to escape from there. Yes, I vaguely remember it, and it was like an escape. For a time we went to the small town in the Midwest my mother grew up in to stay with my grandmother, my mother's mother Nancy. We must have been there more than a month, but not sure how long. I remember for a short time we had a place of our own. It looked like the North Pole in the winter, and my grandmother's idea of discipline when I would not come in the house during a storm as fast as she thought I should, was to lock me out in a snowstorm to teach me a lesson at 5 years old. My mother had a fit, and we left that place and headed back to Oregon. We traveled to a small town called the Dalles, Oregon, where our Christmas tree was a candle and there were no presents. My mother at times tried to make these trips seem like adventures, painting them in an almost fairy tale light. At least at 5 they seemed that way, and I adored my mother, so I thought it must be true. It was also the beginning of the moving we would do on a regular basis. Next we were in Goshen. I have very early memories, one of a man holding me at about 2. I remember the camel-colored trench coat, and until recently wondered if that were my father coming to visit me. I suspect after seeing a photo of my father at that age, it was probably a social worker. I was an illegitimate child born at a time when that was a social outrage. Another of my first significant memories is being in a cottage motel in a small town called Goshen, Oregon, and being really hungry. My mother spent most of my life in bed or lying down, unless she was walking. This day she was in the motel room resting. It was a sunny day, so it must have been at least spring. I was rooting around the weeds and dust outside the bungalow, looking for coins, and I found a nickel. You would have thought I won the lottery. I took it over to a small store, put my nickel on the counter, and asked what I could buy. It bought 5 pieces of banana taffy that would keep me feeling like I had eaten for most of the day. Even that young, I calculated and tried to care for myself. I think Debbie was still breastfeeding and I was on my own. My independence ended up being a blessing and a curse at times. It was 1962, and within a month we were in Portland, Oregon. This was not an exceptional experience, but more the norm for me around hunger until I started school and began free lunch. Jumping ahead, after I got sober and went to therapy, the counselor tried to have me do inner child work, which I hated. I had no photos of me small and thought I must be hideous. Years later, when someone gave me a photo of me at 6, I looked like an ordinary small girl with blonde hair, a little stoic maybe, but definitely not hideous. I could have used that picture for inner child work. Sometimes I notice growing up hard takes over your good memories. It is a systematic trauma. I had by that time forgotten when Maggie's brothers put me on tables to dance and sing. I started singing about 4 or 5 years old. I was an outspoken artistic child that soon was put in front of audiences to sing. I would develop stage fright later on, which would have me abandon the idea of singing, but as a child it was my hope for the future of getting out of this mess. Disclaimer: I am recalling my experiences, trying to be honest, discreet around family members, sharing from my perspective alone. All of this is my copyrighted content. It can be used with a reference to me as such. Thank you so much if you have listened this far. There is much more to come.